Okay, people. April 6, 2017. Touching base on what's going on with here at Uncle John. I don't know, people. We're going back to where we were, where somebody will say something, you make a mental note of it, you might even write it down, and then you follow up on it 2 or 3 weeks later or whatever it is, based on what that other person said to do, and then you're being told that you didn't do what they told you to do, even though you don't recall them mentioning anything about it. So basically what I'm trying to say here is, people, I have been informed that the only kind of help that I'm going to get with Uncle John is 30-minute increments, and I have to go downtown to get that help at 30-minute increments. Other than that, I have to do everything by myself in terms of when it relates to court. You see this board here? I want to do another board, but I don't want to erase this because this is important, because the people that I don't want to say can help me, but the people that are offering some help actually deal more with this kind of stuff on a provincial level in terms of what this trickles down into for the people of this province that were born here. Okay, not the ones coming in with the money, not the ones buying up all the property through the bankster gangster operation there, right? Not the federal government privatizing public services so that the provincial government can benefit from that privatization, right? I need to bring it to my level in terms of where I'm at, so I'm going to write it on another board that I had, because I bought these boards when Andre disappeared, right? You wake up one morning and loved one is gone. It's called modern day slavery, based on a commodity that is being fueled by union corruption and quite possibly even the justice system. Because I am being told, based on what one individual said, that there's no hope for Uncle John in terms of coming back home to his immediate family. Because the court doesn't see us, his immediate family, as a family. They see us as a tenant. Because the family, for some reason, flew in from India, flew in from Iraq, flew in from Libya, flew in from China, flew in from Cambodia, or better yet, the Philippines, flew in from somewhere and scooped him up and flew back out for the simple fact that they can lay down that family card. Well, we're family. We're taking his body, we'll step on his mind, make it so that he forgets his immediate family, so that we can take over his assets and prop up this system that we want to erase and pretend that it doesn't exist, right? In order to keep ourselves fed while we go on to the next victim, which is 20 years of old people coming in through the system, people. Okay? So I'm having to self-represent myself with a little bit of help. As I've got shysters threatening me to pay their wages to protect corruption, because they don't want to do an internal investigation in terms of their banking practices and the practices that are being fueled through the healthcare system in order to prop up the economy so that this government can have its AAA credit rating, right? So that the people that are supposed to help me, well, not supposed to, but could help me, but really can't help me, except at the bare bone minimum, are too busy trying to help the people getting caught up in this nonsense. Because there's a lot of people out there caught up in this nonsense. And neither provincial government or the federal government is funding legal, entities, right, in order to stop the corruption. It's going around and around and around and around. Well, families fly in, grab a family member just because they can say family, fly out, right? Wipe out their memories, reprogram them, right? Isolate them, right? Drug them, restrain them, and hide behind the institutions that allow this stuff to happen. It's like, I'm going to take it to a board. I'm going to write something on the board, so I'm not done with this video. But, I'm kind of like thinking about chickens. You have a flock of chickens, like the female chickens, right? And when you introduce a new chicken into the flock, all you do is you come in at night and you throw it in there with the rest of them, right? And when you want to take one, you take one out and you leave them behind and you forget about them. We have arranged marriages in Canada that constitute a family. Children are being born to be placed into some marriage based on what the parents want. It's still happening in Canada. Or people are moving in from a prearranged marriage. And then what happens is those people that were forced like a chicken into that flock grow old and they become property to the family that allows them to fly in, take the body, don't worry about the mind, destroy the mind, take the body, take the assets, and fly back out like the Duncan clan. So I don't feel that Canada is a very godly nation when somebody can just fly in, scoop you up, and fly out just because they call a family card, even though what constitutes a family? When if you lived with somebody for 23 years, knew them for over 33, and then got old and then had your family fly in and tell you that those people are no longer important to you because the family that flew in wants your assets and feel that they own those assets based on seeing you as a piece of property. That's why arranged marriages come together, because they have this property, that property, they bring the two properties together, and that is to build wealth. You multiply that among that particular ethnic group of people, so they start to have the caste system. But a lot of that caste system isn't built on love. It's not built on family. It's built on politics. Uncle John was taken on politics for political reasons. They didn't take him because they wanted him, because they loved him. They took him because they are playing the system in a Maj-Paj community that respects other people's religions to fly in, take what they want, and fly back out, regardless of the damage that they cause when they leave. So I'm on my own anyway. I'll be back. Hold on. Okay, people. Same day. My daughter was supposed to help me with this, but besides that point, I do want to mention that I was informed today that my oldest daughter is bleeding out. Okay? There's been some issues with her health now for a little while. I mentioned that in the past. But she's had like several blood transfusions, people, because she's bleeding out. This is BC Liberal government healthcare system. They won't put my daughter into a hospital and have her stay there for months on end, like they did with Uncle John, right? They kept Uncle John between the Surrey Memorial Hospital and the Yale Road Center for 45 days until they snuck him off in the middle of the night, didn't follow protocol, didn't follow the legislation, didn't follow the rules, didn't follow the regulations, nothing. And then whisked him off to emergency because he got real sick on the ferry, people, once he realized what was happening to him. And that was their excuse. They had to create the crises in order to rescue him. So then they whisk him off to the Victoria General Hospital in Victoria, British Columbia, Canada. Oh, look how we found him. Oh, we're rescuing him. Ah! They kept him from February 20th. My kids seen him on April 2nd. So February, March. So they kept him for 8 days in February. All of March. Who knows for how long in April or May. And by the time he got to his sister's place in July of 2015, I called, hoping that I could speak to him for a moment. And yes, I spoke to him for 1 minute before the phone was taken away from him. And he had enough time to tell me that he had been hurt. He got injured while in these people's care. He was sick for 3 months. So I called him halfway through July. So July, June, May, June, July. So they released him pretty much from the hospital sick because my kids seen him in April. And by May, he must have been living with his sister, tucked away, far away, out of sight, out of mind, like that dirty little secret, off in the country where he was sick for 3 months. Those are his words. Lost all his memory because he wasn't allowed to talk to us. Have that documented. As I'm being told by professional people that we don't have a case because I'm not a blood family. There comes in that airplane, flew in from somewhere, scooped up, well, not even, how about an argoyle? There comes in the argoyle. It just flew in, you know, scooped up Uncle John with those talons and flew off with him and destroyed his life so they could profit, basically. So he was kept in the hospital for 45 days on the mainland and then probably for another 2 or 3 months at the Victoria General Hospital. No problem. No problem. No problem keeping him because they knew that if they kept him long enough away from his immediate family, it wouldn't be long before that whole system, whether it was the sister or whether it was Fraser Health or whether it was the bank, would benefit. Or the non-profit, semi-privatized old folks home that he's sitting in today, waiting for his extended family to show up and see him. So in the meantime, I'm being told I have to self-represent myself because I'm a loser. That's what I'm being told. I'm a loser. I've already lost. I haven't even gotten out of the gate. Right? So I get 30 minutes through a pro bono group that will allot me 30 minutes intervals to help me clean up my act. As I'm being told that I'm not going to win because I don't have a case. That's what I'm up against. Well, I live in a country that obviously doesn't honor the criminal code because I ran that stuff past this person that took it upon themselves to maybe help me. And apparently it's all insignificant. It's nothing that you definitely put in a notice of claim, right? You can't use the word kidnapping in a notice of claim because it's not acceptable to the court, apparently. It comes out when it's in court. Okay, if that makes any sense to you. It doesn't make any sense to me. Basically, what's happening is, what's happened to my family is being watered down to avoid the reality of what happened, how it happened, and why it's happening. in terms of propping up those institutions and the banking system, the healthcare system, you know, the immigrant workforce, just the whole big circle, right? Keeping assets in the family, where Uncle John gets 4 or 5 consecutive months of hospital attention, where my daughter, 29 years old, is bleeding out and could die at any moment. And if you think I'm kidding, I'm not. Okay? Because you want to know why? Because the system keeps releasing her, hoping that she'll show up for the next appointment, hoping that she'll make an appointment, even though they know she's sick. Even though they know she's sick and she's dying and she's bleeding out, they let her leave, hoping she'll call back. Uncle John was begging to leave, and they refused to let him leave. You want to know the difference between the two? I can tell you the difference between the two. One, he was 76 years old, and he was taken advantage of by the healthcare system, who doped him up to keep him so that he couldn't get up. They made sure that he didn't get enough physiotherapy while they were doing it. And because his sister works for the provincial government and has a long history, she came in with her seniority and her Code White program, started playing little games so she could capitalize off of his, first of all, $2,900 a month buyout package that the provincial government of this province made Uncle John take in 2002 in order to even get a pension plan. So I believe in my heart that he was targeted since 2002, because this government is desperate for money, and they're going to get it by any means necessary. Just like these social workers were going to get Uncle John by any means necessary. Okay? And then, of course, because he was a government employee, and there's like a long list of the Duncans working for the government, everybody's got a superannuation, so they just automatically assumed that Uncle John would have a superannuation life insurance policy, which he didn't, because he didn't want his family coming in and doing what they've done, basically. So they didn't get that. But if Joan left him money, Auntie, Joan left John money, well, they got that because John didn't get it. I can tell you right now, he's sitting in a care home propping up that system. Well, my daughter, on the other hand, is dependent on the provincial government after they enabled her to get addicted to drugs, because they're the ones that allowed it to come into the community in the first place, in terms of crises, where it attached itself to all the vulnerable youth in the communities, right, in terms of age 12, 13, 14, 15. And now they're just, they got their little drug sales, right? And they got all these people homeless now, and and they just bring in the fentanyl, and 916 people in the year 2016 died from fentanyl overdose for a measly $5 a pop, thinking they were getting one thing that actually comes from Afghanistan. It's not even created here. While they're being held hostage to a methadone program that makes billions of dollars for that industry in terms of a healthcare system, but never cures them, never helps them, never really gets them back on track with their own lives. And it doesn't take much to derail them. All it does is take a social worker to come in, kick you out, and take your baby away, and accuse you of this and accuse you of that, and make it so that you don't get housing, make it so you don't get food, make it so you don't have pot to piss in, and then wonder why you went back and started doing what you were doing. Right? It's a genocide in Canada, I'm telling you. Well, the court system is too difficult to reach. You can't depend on pro bono. Right? I mean, right from the get-go, I'm hearing one thing, later being told something else. Is he confused or is he not confused? Isn't that what they did with Uncle John? Well, I told you to call. No, you didn't. You told me to wait, to call you. And now that I'm calling you, you're telling me that I was supposed to call 2 weeks ago. So I've lost 2 weeks waiting for counsel, for some honest assessment. But instead I'm finding out that I have nothing. I lose before I even get into the courtroom, I've lost. Right? Because the gargoyle can fly in, put their talons into something, use the system to their benefit, house Uncle John for 4 months, so that all the paperwork can get arranged, so they can continue taking what they want, where they want it, and apply it where they want it in terms of, well, he's in an extended care home now, right? So that little care home's getting paid, right? The family is getting paid, even though they were never there to help Uncle John, right? Because if they were there to help Uncle John, he would have stayed in Victoria. He would never have moved in with me. Joan would have stayed in Victoria and never would have moved in with us. But from what I'm being told, the court will see this as Uncle John as a tenant. He just rented a room, people. And all these years of living here, calling us his family. While the court, this is what I know I can't move the camera because the screen will flap. But if you look on this board over here, Canadian court system. People treated as property. That's exactly what's happening with Uncle John. He got treated as a piece of property. That's how that family could fly in, put their tentacles into him, and fly off. Keep him locked up in the healthcare system only because his nurse sister worked in that hospital. Again, she overstepped her seniority and got to house him at taxpayers' expense until they could figure out how to rip him off and take over control of his assets and hope they got lucky with an extra life insurance policy that you, the taxpayer, would be paying for. And who does that? There's basically two types. Andre. There's basically two types of commodities when it comes to people, when it comes to our society treating people like commodities. Children and the elderly. Children get more resources because they're little, right? Hold on a minute. All right. What is it? I think it's 3.1 billion or 1.5. No, I think it's $3.1 billion goes into the Ministry of Children and Family Development in terms of social services when it comes to families. Right? I think they have something between 8,000 to 10,000 children consecutively, year after year after year after year within the system in terms of child protective services. Right? Where a lot of those dollars that are propping up that system come from the federal system because family allowances get forwarded over to the province and then the province decides who gets what after it's been hashed out in court 2 years later. That's what happened to us. So what it does is it erodes the family unit, right? And it financially bankrupts them. Doesn't matter if you have a lot of money or a little money. Everybody's getting financially bankrupt. Morally bankrupt, spiritually bankrupt, the whole 9 yards. The elderly, they don't get that same kind of protection. What they get is legislation that people don't necessarily follow. And if they do follow it, there's corruption involved. But because it's a money train, nobody wants to rock that boat. So they hide behind the family, the blood family. Well, let me tell you what kind of blood families we have here in British Columbia, Canada. We have arranged marriages. We have people that move over here with their arranged marriage. In other words, they woke up one day and said, tomorrow you're getting married, whether you like it or not, and that's it. And they're treated like chickens, where one is taken and forced into the, what is it called? Den, pen, whatever you want to call it, to live there. That's your family. It's been decided for you. Doesn't matter if you're abused. Doesn't matter if you're mistreated. It was the family that decided that you're going to go live over there because they're treating you like a piece of property, where your property becomes that family's property, and you basically lost your human rights. And you're there to prop up that system, which fosters honor killing, which we do have out in British Columbia, Canada. Not a lot, but every now and then, somebody will crop up and murder their family member. Whether it's a daughter, because the daughter wanted to be with somebody else, and she didn't want to marry who the family was telling her to marry. Whether it was a wife that can't be with an abusive husband anymore and wants to leave the marriage, they will get hacked up. Here's another problem we have out here in BC. Female circumcision, which comes from various cultures. A lot of African cultures practice that. So they're coming in with their kids, either like female, right, circumcised, or they're circumcising them here. But that's acceptable because it's family. Even though it goes against the Canadian Constitution, even though it goes against the Canadian Criminal Code of Canada, even though it goes against, basic rules, regulations, and legislations, it doesn't matter. It's family. So they get the green light, nobody gets caught, and the practice continues. Then we have polygamy, right? We got the one up there, the BC Bountiful, beautiful BC Bountiful polygamy group. They're up in the mountains at the border of Alberta and British Columbia. Nobody bothers them. Fella out there with 94 kids and 30 wives, living in his little commune of paradise, with his few sons around that he works to death on the farm as he collects thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars of federal BC benefits for children as he knocks up teenagers. That's acceptable because it's family. Then we got the caste system. I'm over here. Right? That's where I am, right here. Through marriage and politics. Right? Because when these people come with their prearranged marriages, they normally come at a higher status. Because Canada does not want to bring in too many poor refugees, because then that's a burden on the taxpayer. As a matter of fact, they're trying to get rid of the poor people out here. And my daughter is the perfect example of that one. Like I said, they can house Uncle John for 4 months until they can figure out the paperwork. But they can't house my daughter for 3 weeks to make sure that she gets the operation that she needs before she dies. You tell me how that makes sense, people. And they come in with their marriages and their superiority and their seniority and their wealth, which is all connected to politics. That's why you got a monster home growing over here and another monster home and another monster home and 1,000 homeless people over there and 2,000 homeless people over there, another 100 over there that are going into homelessness. As all the young people that were born in this country are dying because they're not getting the proper health care. But that's okay, though, because they're family. It doesn't matter the religion. It doesn't matter the race. I'm not picking on anyone in general. But that's what we have out here, people. And then we've got the selective birth. The selective birth is where women go in for abortions to abort the female fetus. Because for some reason, having a man in the house is what's the most important thing when it relates to a family in British Columbia, Canada. Because if they're doing all that other stuff, they're aborting their babies. If they can get away with it. To build wealth. Right? So, this little part here. So who protects the children and who protects the elderly? Here's what I'm finding. These social workers that work for these protective service agencies all across the continent. Okay? It's not just British Columbia, Canada. It's the UK, it's the United States of America, Canada, other places, right? What they do Now here's the rhetoric. What they do is they go in, they take children, based on whatever they base it on, and then once the child is in the system, you can guarantee the child will stay in the system. Because they use the fact that the social worker doesn't want to take the risk, because if it does, then it's a guaranteed lawsuit against the government or whatever. So therefore, an ounce of prevention is a pound of cure. Don't let the child go back home in the event of something bad might happen. I think they call it the 1984 syndrome. Assume guilt before you're proven innocent. Just assume that they're guilty. And then they take that time allotted within the court system to try and build a case against families. And they target families, people. They don't target just the parents. They target the aunts, the uncles, the cousins, the grandparents, okay? Because that's what happened to my family. All of a sudden, everybody's under a criminal check, and, they're being accused of this and accused of that, and, it's just, and they will not allow the babies, the children, to go back home until they can exhaust every last penny out of that system in terms of the courts, justifying the next fiscal budget with the province funding that system, just the whole 9 yards. Whereas the elderly, all they really have is the public guardian trustee, which tries to say that it's an independent body of the government. But they do receive funding from the government. I don't know how much, but a little bit. And it's far from being independent, because they're very selective in terms of who they represent. Would they represent someone like my daughter? Even though that's really what they're supposed to be there for, is the ones that really just are falling through the cracks? No, they won't, because she doesn't represent an income to them. They're not going to make a fee off of their services by helping my daughter. Right? I have gone into court cases, so-and-so against so-and-so on the internet, and it's families that were designated as power of attorneys having to fight the public guardian and trustee to get back the right that was given to them by the beneficiaries of those trustee contracts. Right? So who are they working for? When they're bringing in families and having families to defend themselves, when in fact they're getting a fee for what they do. Right? And like I said, every now and then they'll toss a bone to someone like John's sister who works in the system. Right? If she gets her bone, now she's going to guarantee that the system's going to get its bones. As I'm being told that my family, again, we're not a family, people. I don't know what we are, right? But it's okay to have arranged marriages. It's okay to have honor killings. It's okay to have female circumcisions. It's okay to have polygamy, okay? Because it's not just those guys sitting up there in the mountains. It's the Muslims coming in too with their polygamy, right? It's okay to have the caste system, right? To bring in more wealthy immigrants and push out the poor Canadians so that it's an unnoticeable genocide, as the old people are sitting up in the hospitals waiting for somebody to rescue them because they've been told that they're confused and they don't know what they want. But yet, all these systems use human beings to sustain themselves. And then they run off to their arranged marriages, all these other things, and say, well, we're family. Our family is more important than your family. Right? The gargoyle has the right to fly in, put their talons into you, and fly off with you, and literally devour you alive in order to prop up whatever system that thing flew in from. So I'm having to self-represent myself because there is no Canadian court system in Canada that actually works for the people. Because if there was, I wouldn't be having this conversation with you.